This satellite sweep shows the geographic footprint of Nakai-Nam Theun National Park. Straddling the border between Lao PDR and Vietnam, the park encompasses an enormous 427,770 hectares of mountainous terrain. This photograph shows the dense, old-growth forest canopy covering those borders. As a core component of the Indo-Burma biodiversity hotspot, this specific geography houses some of the highest concentrations of critically endangered species in Southeast Asia. Despite its status as a high-priority conservation asset, the park's administration is paralyzed on the ground. The scale of the ecological protection required is entirely mismatched with the operational capacity to actually enforce it. This image shows the headquarters of UNESCO. The ultimate objective for Nakai-Nam Theun's administration is securing placement on the IUCN Green List and subsequently achieving World Heritage status from UNESCO. Saving a landscape of this scale requires moving past biological idealism. Ecological intentions cannot protect a forest. Only rigid, engineered administrative blueprints can execute conservation at this magnitude. To construct that blueprint, researchers conducted a collaborative workshop involving 49 key informants, the actual personnel tasked with managing the park, to extract empirical data on why their daily operations were failing. The diagnostics isolate the park's internal weaknesses into 4 categories: manpower, money, materials, and management. Across the massive acreage, severe personnel shortages are compounded by a lack of continuous technical training. Rangers are spread too thin and forced to operate multiple roles simultaneously without adequate expertise. This photograph captures the immediate consequence of that manpower deficit. Without the personnel to physically patrol the acreage, environmental laws cannot be enforced, leading to unchecked illegal logging and organized poaching within the park boundaries. These field failures are locked in place by financial and material bottlenecks. Budget allocations are rigid and slow to disperse, while field infrastructure, communication networks, and vehicles degrade without continuous maintenance. The administration is trapped in a reactive state. High ecological value and international funding pledges yield zero results if the underlying administrative machine is broken. The entire organizational structure requires a complete overhaul before biological conservation can even begin. This diagram shows the master structural blueprint researchers designed to solve the administrative crisis. Looking at the top left, the diagnostic phase organizes the baseline conditions using a SWOT analysis, mapping the organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The analysis weighs internal strengths against internal weaknesses, isolating deficits in manpower, money, material, and management. This audit is then mapped against external pestle factors, pulling in broader political, economic, and technological forces. The data isolates a central friction point. The park has massive external opportunities, including funding from international organizations and a government mandate to become a conservation model. However, these opportunities are entirely bottlenecked by internal threats: a lack of enforcement manpower, poor data management, and delayed budgets. This diagnostic friction dictates the next step. The diagram maps the raw organizational inputs directly into the formulation of a new vision, specific missions, and strict strategic objectives. Raw field data is useless in isolation. It must be structurally translated into a prescriptive, multi-tiered strategic architecture to have any impact on the ground. To execute this architecture, the research proposes 5 strategic pillars. Pillar 1 requires driving integrated management to align with government policies. The park must integrate its internal financial operations directly with state-level systems. This creates a flexible, transparent pipeline that bypasses the complex, delayed procurement processes that previously starved field operations of resources. But streamlining internal budgets only solves half the problem. The administration must address the immediate threat located just outside the park's offices: local communities driven to exploit park resources for survival. This necessitates Pillar 2, the mandatory development of a community-based economy and creative tourism. In developing nations, poverty drives poaching and illegal logging. If local populations have no viable income, they will extract the nearest available asset, regardless of environmental law. Pillar 2 fundamentally re-engineers this dynamic. Conservation is achieved by converting locals from resource exploiters into ecotourism stakeholders. When the community profits from guided tours and local services, their financial incentives realign to protect the forest rather than clear it. This captures agricultural development bordering the park. Immediate alternative income requires upgrading these community agriculture systems and training locals to market products online. This photograph shows rangers utilizing elephants for wetland patrols, illustrating community-integrated conservation. The park employs local skills to replace traditional, resource-heavy enforcement tactics. Biological conservation is physically impossible without first engineering a replacement economic engine for the surrounding population. With community economics addressed, the strategy must solve the massive management and manpower deficits identified earlier. This introduces Pillar 3, the creation of a data-driven learning organization. Management decisions can no longer rely on ad hoc, reactive responses from the field. The park must transition to standardized, centralized data collection that informs long-term planning and real-time budgeting. This requires strict data streams, systematized biodiversity monitoring, digital analytics mapping tourists, and real-time financial reporting to optimize resource deployment. Collecting and acting on this data requires Pillar 4, the development of human resource capabilities through modern technology. It is logistically impossible to simply hire enough physical rangers to cover 427,770 hectares of dense mountainous terrain. This map illustrates the solution. Deploying digital monitoring, geographic information systems, and automated sensors acts as a massive force multiplier for the existing personnel, allowing a small, highly trained team to manage a massive geographic footprint. In severely under-resourced environments, digital architecture and data centralization are the only viable substitutes for physical manpower. To ensure these systems operate correctly, the framework mandates Pillar 5, strengthening systems and networks to achieve World Heritage status. Pursuing World Heritage status is not a vanity metric. It acts as a structural requirement that forces organizational discipline upon the park's entire administration. To qualify, every internal dataset, community outreach program, and piece of physical infrastructure must be rigorously calibrated to meet the strict international metrics set by the IUCN and UNESCO. Achieving this requires the park to build deep cooperative networks with external entities, sharing research and tactical strategies with neighboring border authorities in Vietnam and international conservation bodies. International recognition serves as the ultimate audit, permanently locking the park's administration into a state of high-level accountability. Returning to this structural diagram, we can view the total proposed architecture. The 5 core strategic pillars we just examined cascade downward, generating 112 specific, actionable tactics. Those 112 individual tactics are then meticulously distributed across the daily operations of the park to ensure every department operates under a unified mandate. They dictate protocols across 8 specific dimensions: administration, conservation, quality of life for local residents, ecotourism, public relations, scientific research, infrastructure development, and World Heritage preparation. High-level ecological visions will always fail in the field unless they are systematically broken down into a granular, dimensional execution matrix. Stepping back from the blueprints and returning to the physical reality of Lao PDR reveals exactly what is at stake. This photograph highlights a hydropower plant and high-voltage lines cutting through the landscape, illustrating intense human infrastructure pressing against the park's borders. Maintaining the ecological integrity of these landscapes requires looking beyond the scope of biological research. Long-term survival depends on the technical execution of public administration and strategic organizational management. By surgically aligning administrative capacity with community economics and data-driven policies, Nakai-Nam Theun has engineered a specific, sustainable blueprint to safeguard this globally significant ecosystem for the next generation.